Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddy, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is Udart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested podcast, coming to you live Wednesday, June 12th, 2 weeks out from the NBA Draft. We got Game 3 of the finals going on right now, and we are here to talk some NBA Draft. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. I've got my sidekick, JD Silva, with me tonight.
Fellas, back from vacation, got to shake the rust off.
We also have special guest tonight, Bryce Simon. He's at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, but you probably know him from the Pistons Pulse podcast and the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini. Draft extraordinaire Bryce is with us tonight. Bryce, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Jacob, let's be real. If anybody does know me, which I doubt they do, it's from the Game Theory podcast, because there ain't nobody listening to the Uncontested are turning into the Pistons Pulse. Listen to me and my guy Omari Sankofa II talk about the 14-win Detroit Pistons. So I'm very self-aware whenever it comes to that.
We might be talking a Venn diagram here, but the crossover is like incredibly small. We are brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Also the best fast casual dining in OKC, Dave's Hot Chicken and Spark OKC. If you're tuning in the live stream tonight, make sure to hit that like button, drop some comments. If you got draft questions for Bryce, we will try to get to them at the end of the show. So get those in. JD will star those and save those for us as we go on. If you're listening to the YouTube version of this, or sorry, the podcast version of this, make sure to drop that 5-star rating. And if you're watching the YouTube video later, leave a comment, drop a like. That'd mean a ton to us. Let's talk some NBA draft. We haven't talked draft on this show recently. It's kind of strange that the Thunder have the 12th overall pick. And with all the stuff that has gone on with this team the past 2 years, I did probably 5% of the amount of tankathon spins this season than I did the previous few seasons. The draft just hasn't been on the top of the mind of a lot of Thunder fans. Bryce, let's just start off pretty general. Big picture draft stuff. There's a lot of talk that the 2024 class sucks. They're not any good. I think a lot of that is subjective and how you compare it to other classes. Your big picture thoughts on this upcoming draft and how you're seeing it kind of take shape now that we're 2 weeks out.
Yeah, I mean, the term I like better than this draft is bad or sucks is it's flat at the top. I like that a little bit better in terms of there's just no stand. You can't find a guy who looks like a quote unquote number one pick or what you want a number one pick to look like. And this is amplified by the fact that we just had the most number one pick in how many years with Victor Wembanyama, right? Like even Cade and some of these guys were pretty surefire number one picks, but Victor was a generational prospect. And so no matter what, it was almost going to feel like a step down. And then we go into this class where there's some interesting guys. 6 months ago, I said, and this is one thing that I think has proven to be true and holds to this day. If you took the average top 3 of most draft classes and put them above the guys in this class, people would feel so much better. If Alex Sarr was the 4th guy in this class, people would be raving about it. If, let me look at my board real quick. If Reed Shepherd was number 8 in this class instead of number 5, I think people would feel awesome about that. So I think that's what it is. There's just no guys at the top. I think there's good value, honestly, where the Thunder lie. I know we're going to talk about these guys. I think there's some real guys that I'm excited about. So into the lottery, middle of the first round is where I think there's a nice sweet spot in terms of value.
That makes a ton of sense and kind of leads into so I'm someone on our podcast that is, I don't want to say, probably pays the least attention to and watches the least, college ball and pro league ball and things like that. The Thunder are obviously in a win now period now. And Jacob, this question is a little bit lower on our outline, but I think it leads us in pretty well. You would think the Thunder want a more of a win now prospect, like a Cason Wallace type, not necessarily position, but win now, plug and play. What are your thoughts on them drafting someone that is more raw? Like, is there any value in that? And if so, like, what would that experience look like for that type of player? Like a Cody Williams comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think the name that we'll talk about at some point is Tinjon Saloon. Like, everybody loves mocking Tinjon Saloon to the Thunder, and that is a guy that plays extremely hard. So in that way, maybe he could get on the floor early, but he still has some things to iron out with his game, as opposed to, I think Kyle Filipowski is a little bit more ready. Deron Holmes, I hope we talk about him. That's one of my guys in this draft, a little bit older. Dalton Connect's not going to be there for the Thunder, in my opinion, but that's another, he's 23. Devin Carter is a name, again, a little more NBA ready. I think the Thunder could go either way, right? Like, I like the roster they have. I wouldn't mind if they take a swing on a guy that maybe takes a year or two to develop and get there. But what's the appetite for that after the Poku? I mean, where are we at with Ousmane Dieng? Like some of the, like, are we done with that stuff? You guys tell me.
That's a great question. You brought up Saloon, which leads me to, like, the Thunder in the draft have gone, and this isn't like, it's chronological, but not like specific. There's other guys mixed in, like a Chet or a J-Dub.
Yeah, sure.
Darius Baisley, Alexei Pokusevsky, Ousmane Dieng. Bryce, do I have the right to be scared that the next 6'9" versatile forward guy they take is also just not going to be a great basketball player? Like, how wide of the range is that at 12 for a Saloon or a Cody Williams or somebody else? It feels like the Thunder have been rolling the dice and trying 3 to 4 years of these young, bigger wings for 6 years now, and just none of them have hit. Now, we could argue, I think Poku was awesome, and I think he's going to be great in Charlotte. But Ousmane Dieng going into year 3, like, I'm kind of terrified because the dude just doesn't have much of a dog in him. He's not very aggressive. All the skill in the world, but what is to keep me from having a jaded point of view with them trying that again with somebody at 12?
No, I mean, I think it's fair to have that and just say, give me Devin Carter, who seems to have, already shown the production and what he can do. Or again, Deron Holmes or somebody like that. The one thing I will say, I got into this on a different podcast. Saloon is a different prospect than Ousmane Dieng. Like, Saloon is not going to play with the ball in his hands. And Saloon, probably, if you ask me who the hardest playing player in this draft is, Saloon would be one of my top 3 names that I would give you. He has a real motor, however you want to say it. Like, if you want to use coach speak or, whatever. I know people get annoyed with that stuff sometimes. He plays extremely hard, not just defensively, guys, but offensively. There may not be a guy I scouted who impacts the game in transition the way this guy does in terms of running the floor, not to just get himself buckets, but to get teammates buckets because of the gravity of what he draws the defense into the lane when he's running, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So it opens up floor spacing for shooters. He's a good cutter. Like, he will be an impactful defender eventually. It's raw, but I think he'll get there. So it is a little bit different of an archetype, I think, than what Ousmane Dieng was. It's not all predicated on skill because, like, the dude is, like, physically built very well for as young as he is as well. So it's some of those other intangibles that are going to make him successful, not all, like, being able to play with the ball in his hands and attack off the bounce type of stuff.
Sounds like you're telling me he's got that dog in him.
I maybe.
Okay.
Thunder
need a few more dogs.
Yeah. There's a certain level of flimsiness with Poku and Ousmane that, we just, it's tough to watch, especially when you're trying to win a game and you see Ousmane maybe not being super physical.
sorry, JD. Like, so that would be, if I was you guys, like, that would be my worry with Cody Williams, right? Because I think a lot of people hear Cody Williams and they see J-Dub, and that's not what Cody Williams looks like right now. And so, and I think we assume he'll fill out JD, but we don't know. So Cody Williams would be the one that would fit a little bit more of the mold you guys are talking about. He is super skilled, has a great touch around the rim, can play with the ball in his hands, chance to be really good defensively, JD, but he is skinny, and I worry about his ability to be effective at that, how skinny he is right now.
I think we saw him at Jacob and I think we saw him at a playoff game in the stands, and I was like, oh, okay, he is slight. I know he's a few years younger and he has room to grow, but yeah, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's much skinnier than J-Dub is currently.
My worry in the past, Bryce, and we've kind of gone on a tangent here with these like bigger wings that the Thunder have tried. Maybe not as much Baisley, but Poku and Jang for sure. You just kind of get the sense that if somebody tried to like drive through their chest and knock them back and then talk trash to them afterwards, that they would just like go and untuck their jersey and walk to the locker room. Like they wouldn't fight. It almost feels like the Thunder needs someone that, and maybe you're a Pistons guy, maybe not as crazy as Isaiah Stewart, but somebody who's willing to like bow up to somebody.
One time, man, you got a bloody eye. Like what? Yeah, I guess it happened. Something different happened again this year. So I guess I shouldn't say.
But maybe the Thunder needs somebody like that. So maybe that's my question. Is there a guy that kind of fits the Thunder mold, this Thunder archetype of can make a decision with the ball in their hand, good basketball IQ, high character, but it's kind of just willing to like go out there and try to beat the shit out of somebody at pick 12?
Yeah, and I think this is a fair point. I will tell you, this doesn't involve the Thunder, but I've talked to scouts about some of the wings at the end of the first round, and they've talked to me about Baylor Shireman. And they had Baylor Shireman above some of these other wing floor spacers because Shireman is just built in a way where they feel like he can take a bump and hold his ground defensively or on a drive. And so I think to your point, this is something that people need to consider. So if I just looked at my board with who I think could be available, the one that stands out to me is Devin Carter. I mentioned his name a couple times. He just seems super competitive. He's very athletic. He can definitely make quick decisions and do what he needs to there, JD. So I think Devin Carter would fit the mold of what you're talking about. Here's my thing with Devin Carter is where's the path to minutes for Devin Carter with SGA, with Lou Dort, with Isaiah Joe, with Cason Wallace? Is there a path to playing time? Another one that's interesting, and my guy Sam Vecini likes this kid a lot. I believe he mocked him to you in our most recent, is Bub Carrington out of Pittsburgh. Bub is a little slighter, but Bub has some toughness to his game and could be real interesting with his size. So I guess I would kick it to you guys in terms of, does a guard make sense here for the Thunder? Or is that more of a long-term play that is eventually Isaiah Joe gets too expensive to keep around? I mean, I don't think they would move on from Dort. He's on a good contract and he's a really good player. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. Cason was awesome. I just wonder if there's minutes for a guard in Oklahoma City.
It's a fair question to ask, and I think we've had that discussion on this podcast too. Like, are they going to keep both Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe?
Yeah, Aaron Wiggins as well. Yeah,
and having some, I think we saw in the playoffs, having some scoring punch, some like more on the ball scoring punch off the bench in the playoffs. Like we saw that would be really valuable. So I do think it may drive some of the fans nuts if they draft another guard, another smaller wing, something like that. But I think there is value in that, even if we perceive that there's more of a need at like the four small ball 5.
For sure. And to be fair, like the obvious need is that larger wing. I don't think they're getting somebody in the draft that's going to come in and take that role and play the type of minutes they need there. I think that is a trade/free agency requirement. Acquirement. Well, I can't speak tonight. They will acquire that guy in trade or free agency. I don't think you're getting somebody at 12 that's going to come in and start at the 4 and, dislodge Josh Giddey and play 30 minutes a night. So, I mean, they're almost at the spot where they can just go like best player available. I know a lot of people question them taking Cason Wallace last year because they said they don't need a guard. So then taking another guard this year might drive some people insanely nuts, but I'm not totally against it as long as it is the right fit.
Well, and the thing is, I thought Dagnall did a really nice job with Cason Wallace in terms of his role. Like, he would do interesting stuff with him. And I think Bub is interesting here for the Thunder at 12 because of what you guys just said in terms of needing some on-ball scoring. The best thing that Bub Carrington does right now is score off the bounce. His pull-up jump shot is his best quality on the offensive end. Now, he can operate a ball screen. He has good feel. He can spray the ball to pass. He can pass it. Doesn't pressure the rim a lot. So if that's what you're looking for, that's not what you're going to get with Bub. And then he is longer and I think has a chance to be a good defender, even though that was a little up and down throughout the season. So, he's a little bit bigger than Devin Carter. I think has a little bit more chance for scoring juice. Devin Carter, I think, is a little more solid, definitely a better defender right now. Devin Carter is getting a lot of love right now, and I like Devin Carter. Like, do not get me wrong. I have Devin Carter number 10 on my board right now. I do wonder about the jumper just a little bit, guys, because it was a 1-year sample. The jumper's a little bit weird. And then if he doesn't shoot it at the rate we saw this last year, is he as valuable? But those would be a couple names in the backcourt that would make sense. If you wanted a little more, like, a downhill guy, Isaiah Collier. I have Collier a little bit lower, but he doesn't scream Thunder type of player to me.
I agree with that.
And so I don't consider him as much in this spot if you're looking at guards.
I think that's fair. Last question I have before our first break. You've been scouting this class for a while.
Yeah.
We talked about this class at the top of the show. Pre-college season, overseas pro season, scouting this class to now 2 weeks out from draft day, where we kind of have all the information. We're just kind of very, like you talked about, on your big board right now. Like, I'm assuming that there's not going to be big shifts in that the next 2 weeks.
No. Yeah.
So difference from 12 months ago to now for this class, what have been some of the biggest shakeups, the biggest movers, and your biggest change in perspective of this draft, looking at the change over time?
Yeah, so I will say one guy I like from the top was Alex Sarr. This is one that, like, when I very first turned on the film. So what I do is, like, I've already started scouting the 2025 class, started watching film on those guys just to get some foundational feel for who they are, what their game is. When I did that with Alex Sarr last year, I was like, I love this dude. This dude is awesome. I also just love this archetype of big and its potential with Alex Sarr. It's not as for sure as like someone like Chet, but so Sarr is one. I would say a dude that really fell was Justin Edwards at Kentucky. Kentucky is like the poster child for this draft in terms of DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards would have been the first round picks. Justin Edwards probably a lottery pick, if not top 5. Like, Justin Edwards is maybe a first round pick, and Wagner's not even in the draft. And Reed Shepherd and especially Reed Shepherd, wasn't a guy that people were talking about coming into. So, like, those are, like, that team just upon itself. I think some of the overseas guys with Risa Shea, Topic, Saloon, and then even guys making some late stuff here with Pakum Dadier, they've really made, shake things. I feel like in general, those guys. Another thing is, I feel like the NBL is kind of the one standing out this year with Alex Sarr. Bobby Klintman's another guy coming out of the NBL, where it was OTE, last year with the Thompson twins. And then just the craziness of the G League Ignite. I like, those guys are so hard to evaluate because of the context. And I tell people all the time, there's a reason the NBA canceled the program. Like, they didn't say, you know what, let's try something different. They just said, no, we're getting rid of this altogether. And it makes it really interesting evals for the likes of Ron Holland, Matas Buzelis, and Tyler Smith, and Ethan Almanza if he decides to stay in.
It's super interesting because Buzelis was someone that our guy Nick was talking about for a long time early on, and I like Buzelis. I doubt he would. I mean, do you think he would fall to 12? I think from what I've seen, he's going more like top 10.
Yeah, I don't think Buzelis would be awesome. if he did start to fall in Oklahoma City with their $3 billion extra first round picks, decided that they could spare one or two and move up, that would be an really interesting fit for them in terms of Buzelis. I think I see Buzelis as a forward, like a 4-man. And so I think he could fit in really nicely for what you guys are looking for. I do not think he will fall to 12 though.
I just think he's got a cool name, so I'd be happy if they drafted him.
He does.
All right, let's take our first break of the night. We will be right back. And we are back. JD, can we tell the folks about some Spark Burgers, please?
I absolutely will. Spark joy at Oklahoma's family-friendly joint Spark, located in Scissortail Park, recently opened in Chisholm Creek, and opening mid-June in Nichols Hills. Dive into their menu of burgers, bites, and cold delights. Don't skip the must-try BLC burger, pink fries, frozen Peach Club special, and rotating custard flavor of the month. Can't forget to mention their newest menu item, Rumble Fries. This tray of loaded fries are perfect to share for the whole table, named after none other than Rumble the Bison himself.
For the Spark of the Week this week, the question is, which guy could OKC take at 12 that would spark the fan base into a frenzy? So a hot take, a very divisive pick. JD and I aren't super draft guys, so I will kick us off here. We also have one Taylor Peterson joining the podcast with a toddler finally in bed. My guy that would spark the fan base into a frenzy, and I hope I'm not stealing Bryce's. I don't give a shit if I steal JD's or Taylor's. I hope I don't steal Bryce's.
Let it rip.
Zach Edey.
It was not mine, so you didn't steal it, but that is a fun one. That is a fun one.
If they took Zach Edey, I think some of this fan base would be so excited. They got the rebounder. And some of them would be like doubling up their Prozac prescription. It would be so divided. I might be one of those guys taking extra depression pills if they took Zach Edey. Yeah. But he is an interesting one that I think would just split the fan base into two. So we don't have JD or Taylor steal Bryce's answer. Bryce, do you want to go next? Who is the guy that you think would just be a very would split the fan base as far as like and not like?
Yeah, I wonder what Rob Dillingham would do to the fan base and how people would perceive that, because I don't love the fit there. I don't think he makes a lot of sense, but I wonder if some Thunder fans would get excited just with the talent. I do not have Rob Dillingham as high as a lot of people do, but you can go find big boards that absolutely have Rob Dillingham as a top 5 player, definitely as a top 10 player. And so I just wonder if some fans would go, hey, at number 12, we got a top 5 player and a top 5 talent that can really score the basketball. And so that was the name I came up with there. I have another name after Taylor and JD go if they don't say it as well.
Taylor, welcome aboard. You can let yours.
I'm here. Apologies for not only not reaching out to Bryce sooner with the outline, sending him the link super late.
Oh, it's all good.
It's been one of those days with a 2-year-old, but nonetheless, I'm here. I couldn't miss out on having Bryce on. I've been so excited to pick your brain, Bryce, and I hate that I missed some of the earlier segments. But if I had to pick one, I think that would be a spark for the Thunder fan base. I'm going to go with none other than Jalen Williams' brother, Cody Williams. I think the entire fan base would be ecstatic because it's Cody. Even before the offseason happened and like all the Thunder fandom started to become draft experts, as I like to say, and started diving into the draft and kind of actually looking into players. Everybody was very excited about Cody. I mean, I wasn't going to.
And Taylor's gone.
And he's gone.
JD, do you have a guy?
I do. Mine's kind of there's two sides of this coin. I'm going to go with Tristan da Silva.
Okay.
I think because he is kind of plays that bigger forward position, but he wouldn't, from what I've read and listened to on the Game 3 with you and Sam, wouldn't necessarily solve the rebounding issue. So I think he could be a frustrating watch for those hoping that he would cure that. And then on the other side of that coin, personally, I would just love to have someone with the last name Silva in the league. Selfishly, would love that. A lot of merch opportunities for us. My cousin's name is Tristan D. Silva, so
That's
yeah,
incredible.
a lot of opportunities for personal growth there.
Love it.
Did we hit the name that you were going to add, Bryce?
No, I was gonna say Ron Holland. I would be
Oh,
interested to see
Yeah.
what Thunder, because I think that would be similar to Rob Dillingham in terms of this is a big time talent, but does he fit? The Thunder are one of those teams when you say Oklahoma City, there's like a real, this is the type of player they look for. You know what I mean? Like if I say Detroit Pistons, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. When you say Miami Heat, that means something. You have a certain player in your mind. For Oklahoma City, I always think dribble, pass, shoot, unselfish, keep the ball moving, those type of things. And I think Ron Holland's really talented.
Test. There we go. Jeez.
You're here, Taylor. Thank you.
And I don't think he fits that mold as much as I like him. So that one would be interesting. Again, because it's like, this is a huge high-end talent, but is he a thundery type of player?
Ron Holland, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce, I think you hit the nail on the head on the Thunder draft archetype. Like, I think you're very good with that. But pre-rebuild Thunder, like KD Russ era Thunder, the archetype was more long, rangy, athletic, maybe lacks the skill. I'm thinking guys like Andre Robertson. I'm thinking guys like Thabo Cephalosha. I'm trying to come up a Terrence Ferguson. These guys that are like super athletic, project to be like really good defenders, but maybe lack a lot of the skill stuff. Would you say that's maybe closer to what Ron Holland is?
Yeah, I mean, Hamidou Diallo, right? Started his career in OKC. I like Hamidou Diallo. I thought he would like find a way to kind of stick in the NBA, and he hasn't been able to. But I have said that if Ron Holland, like that is the floor for Hamidou Diallo, or excuse me, Hamidou Diallo is the floor for Ron Holland if things don't click. And so I think the type of player you're talking about would make sense. I just think Ron Holland also has the upside of the modern NBA wing who can get buckets on one end and defend on the other end, along with athleticism and the other necessary skills and physical tools. And that's where I really see the upside with him. But there is a real floor for Ron Holland as well. And it's because of that, it's hard to pinpoint the exact team to send him to, and why I think it'd be fascinating if he fell to 12 and, the Thunder took him.
Interesting. All right. I think that's all for Spark of the Week.
I'm back, finally. Sorry. Hey, can I finish my Cody Williams thought really quick? Because I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Hopefully anyways, I'm going to try not to be flustered after all of that. With Cody, like I said, everybody would be extremely excited just because he's the brother of J-Dub and they have these high expectations. But I think as the season progresses and they see that he isn't quite ready, I think it would be very divisive amongst the fan base. He's a guy that probably could use a lot of reps if he's with OKC, probably with the Blue. And if he goes to another team, I could see him more so in a young developing team where he can get those reps without being, kind of punished, for lack of a better term, for some of those mistakes. And so I can see the fan base being very divided on Cody throughout the season if he were to fall to 12 to OKC.
I think that's fair. All right. Our next segment is a fun one. We were trying to cook up a game for Bryce. We thought, do we go with the classic take it or leave it? Do we play one of our other games? And
just don't ask me trivia. I told you earlier that I went on the Athletic NBA show and Schleck does the trivia game.
Oh yeah.
And I had heart palpitations for the last 24 hours after he asked me on, because so I get on there, perform decently well, but can't count. And he was asking questions about the number 5 pick. And I said freaking Chris Bosh instead of Dwayne Wade at number 5, like an idiot. I knew the answer. I knew, and I just simply miscounted. And so even though I did okay, I still did something boneheaded. And I was so mad at myself.
Alex Spears is the best and the worst at that. he's the worst because he puts you on the spot and he builds up this tension, but he's so good at
a lot of pressure.
those segments.
Yeah.
Yes.
No trivia here.
Thank
Instead,
you.
we're kind of going to go the opposite direction, actually, Bryce. So we all are familiar with I can't think of specific names, but like these old dating shows where there's the guy and then the wall and like the three ladies, and he's trying to talk to all three of them, and you got to make a decision, but he can't see them, so there's no like attraction value as far as like physical attraction or whatever. We're going to play matchmaker for the NBA draft. When I say we, I mean Bryce. The three of us are going to give you either a draft prospect's name or an NBA team's name. Your job, Bryce, is to play matchmaker. You are going to give us the most realistic match for that player or team.
Okay.
The dream match for that player or team. And then we'll call it like the nightmare scenario match for that player or team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. So if we give you a player, you're matching them with three different teams. If we give you a team,
3 different players.
you are using that specific team to match different players.
Cool.
So we'll kick us off with a player, and
Okay.
then we can just you guys can roll off from there. I'm going back to my spark, Zach Edey.
Who? Okay, so I think you said most realistic, right?
Yep, we're going most realistic, dream, and nightmare.
Okay, so I will stick most realistic with the New York Knicks. I just think that's the range for me where I'm the most comfortable, even though I will say I have Edey a little bit higher than where the Knicks are at. I don't think he should go this high, but I do. Thank you so much. This is going to make it way easier for me. Guys, I am old. I
can't remember.
I have 3 kids, Taylor, so my head's spinning all the time. So that was realistic. Dream, I think Memphis makes a lot of sense for him.
Okay.
I just would not take him at 9. So that's a little bit weird in terms of that. But if they could trade back and then draft him, and then nightmare fits. I don't like him in Toronto. I don't think he would make sense in Minnesota.
That's a good one.
Play the 2 in Minnesota.
Can I just go Minnesota because
Yeah.
they have bigs and it's no.
That's
So,
a great one.
I love that one.
okay, awesome. Perfect.
JD, you're up.
Okay. I'm just curious, and I hope I don't mispronounce his name. Zachary Risachet?
Yeah, perfect.
I'm going to go with him. What do you think?
So realistic, I think Risachet goes. I'm going to say 4 to San Antonio because I think Washington has a bunch of wings and forwards already that they're somewhat invested in. Houston definitely has some wings and forwards that they're invested in. And I don't think he goes number 1. So I'm going to say realistically, he goes to San Antonio at 4. Dream fits is the Detroit Pistons at number 5. That would be a home run for them if they fell to 5 and still got Zachary Risachet. Nightmare fits. I'm going to go Houston. And it's no indictment of Risachet. It's just I don't see the path to playing time on that Rockets roster with Dylan Brooks, who is important for that team. You can even throw Jalen Green in there, Jabari Smith Jr. I know these guys are different versions of wings, forward, shooting guards, whatever. But, like this, Risachet has a little bit of versatility. But then you have Cam Whitmore. You have Tari Eason. Amin plays off the ball in a wing forwardy type of role. I just don't see the path to playing time there.
Perfect. Taylor?
These two have gone players already, so I'm going to switch it up and go teams, Bryce. And it just so happens, this team I find fascinating because of where they fell yet again in the lottery. And it also happens to be your favorite team and the team that you started covering.
Yeah.
So the Detroit Pistons, give us most realistic fit, dream fit, and nightmare fit.
I think the most realistic fit is probably Matas Buzelis. That just seems to be the name that goes there. I don't think Risachet falls to them at 5. Reed Shepherd is a nice fit. I don't think he makes it. He might, depending on if Houston trades that pick at number 3. I think if Houston stays at 3, that's who they end up taking. So I'll say Matas Buzelis for the most realistic. Dream fit, I'm going to stay with Risa Shea. I think Risa Shea is the guy because this is a team. I mean, Alex Sarr is the dream fit to me. I think he would be awesome as well. Some people would disagree with me because of Jalen Duren. I think Alex Sarr's defensive upside would be real interesting, but my answer is still Risa Shea with Sarr just because he's so talented. Nightmare fit. Interesting. Oh. You know what I'm going to say here? People are going to disagree here. I don't think Nikola Topic makes sense in Detroit. I think Nikola Topic needs to be on the ball. I think Cade Cunningham wants to be on the ball, and I don't see those guys playing as well together as some people do, and I understand it. Just my vision for Nikola Topic, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I will also give I'm wary of Steph Castle and Ron Holland because of their lack of floor spacing. Love them as players, don't love them in Detroit. Don't love them as much.
It's fair. Let's do one more round. I'm going player again. This time I'm going Donovan Clingan.
So realistic fit. I think he's going to Washington, guys. I really think he's going to.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I think that might happen.
At 2, or do they trade back potentially?
No, I think they just take him. I think we may see a Sarr Clingan 1-2.
Okay.
Is kind of how I'm feeling right now. If they don't, it gets interesting, right? Does Houston need to take him? Does he make sense in San Antonio? Again, in Detroit, I like the idea of it or have warmed up to the idea of it, but they may not think so with Jalen Duren. Charlotte has Mark Williams. Portland has DeAndre Ayton. I don't know what Robert Williams' health and long-term plan in Portland is. I kind of like Duop Reith even there in Portland. I mean, okay, dream fit is Memphis. So I know
I agree with that.
Yeah, I know I sent Edie there earlier. Memphis should trade up. If I'm Detroit, what I'm actually hoping for, if Risa Shea isn't there, is Clingan is there at 5 and Memphis wants to trade up. And I can trade back to 9 and then maybe get Connect or Matas Buzelis or somebody like that there. So I would say that's definitely my dream fit. And then I need a nightmare fit for Donovan Clingan.
It wouldn't be foul if you just went Minnesota again, for what it's worth.
I was trying to stay in the top 10.
Yeah.
You know, like, does Utah make sense with Walker Kessler and John Collins? I know, like, I don't know what John Collins' future is there. I wouldn't not draft somebody because of John Collins, but does Walker Kessler, is he just considered an upgrade? I think Portland's weird. You know who's would be, I'd have to think about is even San Antonio. Does he make sense next to Wemby or not? I don't know that he does, because I think Wemby's best playing the 5. So
that was my thought.
Yeah,
I like that one.
I think San Antonio would be an answer there.
Silva, you go next. I'll round us out.
I'm always curious about this team.
Okay.
I'm curious about their prospects they have. So I'm going to go with the team this time. The Charlotte Hornets.
Okay. Love it. So realistic fit. I think Reed Shepherd is realistic to the Hornets at 6. I think there's a chance he gets there. I don't think it's a great chance because I do think Houston could take him. I think all 3 teams above Charlotte could take him. They definitely could. So I think, let me change my answer here to fit the game better. I think realistic is probably Ron Holland. Dream fit is probably Reed Shepherd. And Steph Castle probably needs to fit into one of those as well. One of those 2 categories. Those are the 3 guys. And why I like Holland and Castle as non-floor spacers right now in Charlotte is LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller can shoot. And so you're putting guys in between them. Now Reed Shepherd fits in there, and now you have 3 guys that can really shoot it. And that's really interesting. So I think all 3 of those guys would fit into the realistic dream situation there. Nightmare fits. Risa Shea's okay. Let me ask you guys this. Like, how do you guys feel about Mark Williams? I feel like I've seen Klingon mocked to the Hornets multiple times with no mention of Mark Williams whatsoever. Am I missing something?
I like Mark Williams.
Same.
And I know
he's
that
young.
Yeah, I know the Hornets like him as well. I also have heard, I'm not one that usually has like sources, but I've heard from a source that they really like Reed Shepherd. And so it wouldn't surprise me you mentioned Reed for the Hornets. It wouldn't surprise me if they even are aggressive and try to move up for him. The Klingon fit, I mean, maybe, I think what people are thinking there is that he's a better prospect maybe than Williams out of college.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. But I think that's maybe where that's coming from. I'd rather see them go for a guy like a Shepherd over another big.
Yeah, I don't think it's nightmare with Klingon at all. In the same way that, I said that Klingon to Detroit could make sense, and you play him and Duran at the 5 and just decide which one you think is better. Maybe that works. So Klingon's not the answer here.
I feel like a Rob Dillingham is a strange fit there because they keep taking guys of similar archetype, like Nick Richards and so on and so forth. Book night.
Yeah, that's a good call with Dillingham. Again, Dillingham's a little bit lower, and I was trying to keep guys like that I actually have in my top 10, but Dillingham would be a little weird there. Yeah, that's a good call.
Taylor,
so
run us out.
Because I didn't get to be at the present during the first part of the podcast, we have kind of, I think we've stayed in the kind of that top 10 range. I'm going to change up the rules a little bit, Bryce. Okay. Instead of realistic fit, dream fit, nightmare fit, I'm just going to give you 3 players. We're going to get deeper in the weeds here for some of the Thunder fans maybe who don't know these players so well.
Okay.
Just give me like your ideal fit. Doesn't have to be the perfect fit, where you kind of see these players going.
Okay.
First one, Jalen Tyson.
We took him for Milwaukee on the most recent Game Theory podcast because my guy Matthew Curley asked for that. And that's where I have Jalen Tyson roughly on my board. I have Jalen Tyson in a 19 to 27 tier. And so I think that makes sense. I think Phoenix could make sense for him. Maybe as high as Cleveland. I think Milwaukee makes sense. That range, Minnesota. So anywhere in that 20 to anywhere in the 20s, Milwaukee makes sense for Jalen Tyson.
Why is Jalen not being mocked or considered higher than
I
that
don't
range?
know.
Is it the playmaking? Is it the inability to play off ball? Those are the 2 things that come to my mind, but I'm not sure I'm there.
So Tyson's tough because the role he played this last year at California is not the role he will play in the NBA. He played a ton on the ball, and that's not what he's getting. So I wonder if people do question his off the ball ability. I also think he'll be better defensively than what he saw at Cal because he took so much usage for that team on the offensive end. I think he'll have more energy for the defensive end. And then at the end of the day, and there's all sorts of circumstances around this, he went to 3 schools in 3 years. And when you immediately see that, some people are going to have questions. Maybe he's answered all of those. I don't know. I'm not much of an intel guy myself. I should put that out there. Sam talks to people. I don't talk to people. The scouts the information I'm giving you guys tonight is what I see on film. It's not much else than that. So there may be intel out there that I'm not privy to. I had Cam Whitmore number 5 on my board last year because I didn't have the intel of what apparently dropped him 15 spots lower than that. And I just evaluate people off what I see on film and nothing else, because that's all I really have access to.
Sam had him up there as well, even with the intel.
Oh, yeah,
and, it doesn't look too bad to have that high.
Yeah.
Next one really quickly, Jonathan Mogbo. You guys already talked about Bub Carrington, so we won't go back down that rabbit hole. But Mogbo seems to be a player who's kind of rising, or maybe getting a little more hype during the pre-draft and then into the workouts. He's starting to get a little more hype. What are your thoughts on Mogbo and where he maybe would fit?
Yeah, so I have Mogbo solidly as a second round prospect. So maybe he could work his way into the top of the second, something like that. Active forward / big, kind of an undersized big, play finishes and rebounds, can really pass is something I think that people really like with him. And the defense was impactful. He's active with his hands, getting steals, those type of things. It's a little bit sporadic. He'll have to dial it in a little bit, but I think he does play extremely hard. So for me, I would want to find a team in the second round that would use their bigs in that way to, short roll pass and kind of allow their bigs to do those type of things. Houston at 44 is interesting. Sacramento at 45 would be interesting as a guy off the bench for those teams. San Antonio at 48. That's kind of the range for me with Jonathan Mogbo.
I like it. And then my last one is kind of my draft crush that I've been intrigued by ever since really around the winter time, Dylan Jones.
Dylan Jones. Yes. Dylan Jones is insanely skilled in such an interesting eval because this dude, as you know, Taylor, rebounds the heck out of the basketball, passes the heck out of the basketball, played on ball a lot, but I don't know that's going to be his role in the NBA. And so I think what he's going to have to really be able to show that he can do is shoot it. I also think Dylan Jones is another guy similar to Jalen Tyson, who is a better defender when he gets into the NBA because the usage isn't so high. I think Dylan Jones is a solid second round pick as well. I think, again, you got to find a team that's a little bit creative with how they use him. So if I was looking through second round picks, that would, I think Nick Nurse does a good job. Maybe Philly, if you're willing to take him at 41, would be interesting because they need older guys who can come in and play right away.
I love that fit.
That went well. Jacob, you honestly scared the heck out of me when you told me we were going to play this game before we started, and that went way better than I thought.
Good. Well, when you have the knowledge that you have, I think it's pretty easy. Let's take our last break of the night. On the other side, we're going to get deep into the Thunder with this draft. We talked more like big picture stuff. We're going to get deep with the Thunder on the other side of this break. We will be right back. And we are back. Bryce, tons of questions about the Thunder for this draft, but let's start here. We just did the game where we made you matchmake, and you had to do realistic, dream, and nightmare matches. So do it for the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most realistic or the most commonly one is going to be Tin John Saloon. We already talked about that a little bit. It just seems like that makes sense. Dream. I don't like doing this because I think DeRon Holmes is awesome. And I have talked myself into him making sense for the Thunder, but I don't think Thunder fans are going to like that. And I don't think they're going to like that answer. I don't know that that's the dream fit. I just think it's an awesome, really fun fit. I think Sam would tell you it's Bub Carrington, to be honest. I think Sam really, really likes that fit. Nightmare. Well, I don't like that we crap on Rob Dillingham, but Rob Dillingham, I don't think that one makes a ton of sense.
It's not that he's a bad player. It's just we're talking about fit.
The fit thing, yeah.
And Rob is interesting. Here's where Rob would fit is you have Chet behind him protecting him defensively and all of those other defenders around him. That's where he would fit. But Rob's an interesting prospect. I will say that. Super skilled. In a vacuum, probably the most talented offensive player in the class. In a vacuum, if you're not factoring in size, physicality, all of that stuff, the dude can get buckets. And I think he passes the ball pretty well also.
Okay, I'm going to go one more question. I know I'm kind of commandeering here, and then I'll facilitate to JD and Taylor. But this one's a big one for me, and it's not on our outline. So, Bryce, you've mentioned multiple times now that you and Sam recently did a mock on Game Theory. Can you tell us just real quick the top 4 in that mock
for the Thunder?
No. Just picks 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, who went 1, 2, 3, 4? So
yes.
Starr went 1 to the Hawks. Klingon went 2 to the Wizards. Shepard went 3 to the Rockets, and Risa Shea went 4 to the Spurs.
Okay, let's say that plays out on draft night.
Okay,
and we are at pick 5. The Pistons are on the clock.
Okay.
And we get the Woj bomb. The Detroit Pistons are trading the 5th overall pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay. We don't get, in this scenario, I'm not giving you the context of what the trade package is. Woj is still trying to figure out. He's got the 10 phones going on the ESPN desk.
Isaiah Joe better be a part of that trade. That's all I'm saying.
The Thunder have moved into the 5th spot in the NBA draft.
Okay.
Who is the guy they need to take?
So they're on the
Who are
clock
they
at
moving
5.
up for? They've obviously identified a guy.
My guess would be Presti fell in love with Buzelis.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought too, but I was interested in what you thought.
I'm not saying that's what I would want them to do.
What would you want them to do?
Not trade up to number 5.
Agreed.
In that scenario, like if Risache falls to 5, of course. Again, Holland doesn't make sense. Castle would be another one potentially there. He does all of the things that are thundery other than shoots. And if he does shoot, though, it's really, really good. But he could be a connective tissue for them. He can do a little bit of the on-ball stuff. He would really fit in defensively, I think. I think he would be really good on that end of the floor. And maybe there's enough floor spacing on the rest of the roster to make that work, depending on what happens with Josh Giddey. But, yeah, I think Buzelis would probably that – excuse me. Or he fell in love with Connect's floor spacing and thinks they can insulate his defense. That would be quite the aggressive move for Connect at 5, though, I think.
All right. JD, Taylor, what Thunder questions do you have as we round this bad boy out?
I'm really curious. You've talked about DeRon Holmes a lot.
Yeah.
A question we were going to ask is there value in trading him back? I mean, do you assume DeRon Holmes is a candidate if they wanted to trade backwards? And if it's not him, who else could it be?
Yeah. So I think when we got to the board last night, there was Bub, Saloon, Holmes, Filipowski. Most people have Filipowski higher than DeRon Holmes. I'm cool with it. I told Sam I'm not going to quibble over somebody who thinks Filipowski is better. DeRon Holmes is just my guy in this class. You know, Taylor, you tweeted out the other day, I think it was the 3 guys you asked me about, right? That were your guys.
Minus Bub, because I knew you guys talked about him already.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, like, everybody has them. And it doesn't mean you think they're the best player in the draft or whatever, but you just kind of fall in love with their game. I tended to watch more DeRon Holmes throughout the year. I just think he's super skilled. I do think he can shoot it. I understand the pushback that he's only done it for a year. I completely understand it, guys. I get it. I'm cool with it. I'm buying it. And I think that's an important archetype. What I love about DeRon Holmes is if he doesn't shoot it, he also catches lobs. He does have rim gravity. He led the country in dunks 2 years ago. So even the floor could be just rim running, lob catching big if he isn't able to dribble, pass, and shoot, which I think he does. And then he is a good defender. And one thing that I don't think is going talked about enough is his defensive rebounding. I was looking up his defensive rebound percentage numbers today, like the advanced numbers on B-Ball Reference. It's only a little bit below Zach Edey, and it's actually above Donovan Clingan when you just look at the defensive rebounding percentage, not total rebounds, just defensive rebound percentage. And so I think that's where he makes sense for the Thunder. Dribble, pass, shoot, is a lob threat, defensive rebounds.
So I don't have, but I think Jacob has one more kind of draft-wide, league-wide question before we get out of here. I don't have another Thunder-specific one. I just kind of want to piggyback off Silva. Bryce, you know, I know you like DeRon a lot. Honestly, I do too. I have my own thoughts here, but what is the difference? What did you see from him this season in comparison to last year where he was kind of mocked? I understand last year was quote-unquote a stronger draft heading into the draft, but what did he do this season specifically that makes you think that he's really improved as a prospect?
Yeah, so the first is the shooting. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the numbers here in terms of like his 3-point attempt rate went from 0.05 to 0.21. So he not only did he take threes, he also knocked them down at a 39% rate. He was only a lot of people question the free throw percentage at 71%. I get it. But the rebounding was another thing. His defensive rebound percentage as a sophomore was 16.8. He jumped that to 23.7 this year. His assist percentage went up. His steal percentage went up. His block percentage went up. His turnover percentage went down. All while his usage going up. So he went back to Dayton and was the top dude on the scouting report every game and still put up insane numbers. And I think he's even better in ball screens offensively than what he gets credit for. and I don't want to knock the Dayton guards, but I don't think their guards did a great job operating ball screens and getting him to lobs and those type of things. They had good players. Kobe Bray, a really good player, but he's a spacing three-point shooter, not necessarily a ball handler in the pick and roll. So I had questions about DaRon Holmes coming into the year, guys. Truly, I had questions, and he answered them. And then one final thing, he got off to a slow start. He did not come out of the gates crushing it. After the Grambling game on December 2nd, when he scored 5 points and had 6 rebounds, he took off. Something changed. And from that point on, he averaged 22, 9, 2.5 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks, shooting 56, 40, 71 throughout the rest of the season in 25 games. And his team was 19-6. I realize it's the A10. I like that production.
Bryce, have you ever considered being a lobbyist? Because you got me fired up. I'm ready. Draft him at 12. Let's go.
So here's the problem with this. I don't do this, and I know you guys are just joking, but I don't do this to push my opinions on people. I truly just love giving my scout. This is what I think about the player. You take it, and wherever you think that value is, I'm cool. I don't even like doing big boards. I don't want to rank these guys. I just want to tell you what I see on film. But I've started to get this way with Holmes, and it just naturally happens. I did it with Benedict Mathurin. What would that be?
Yes,
a few years ago. The Pistons took Jaden Ivey, but Benedict Mathurin was that guy in my class. And I ended up talking Pistons fans into wanting Benedict Mathurin, and I didn't mean to. I just really enjoyed watching the dude play.
Yeah, for sure. Unless you guys have anything else, I think the last one is, well, 2 ones. Let's start with the league-wide one, and then we'll go to the final Thunder question.
Sure.
You talked at the beginning of the show how this is kind of like a flat draft.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I know you've said you're not talking to people and have sources, but just from your experience with drafts and prospects and how the draft works, do you think a flat draft lends itself to more movement on draft night around the draft board, or less, because teams might say our draft board is so wide that, who we have at 5, you might have at 30. Do you think it tends to lead to more movement or less movement that we will see on draft night?
It's a great question. It's something we've been talking a lot more about recently on pods across the board. And you see the conversation on Twitter. In general, I think people tend to believe it will lead to less movement because the value isn't there to move up. I wonder, I'm holding out hope that we see the opposite because of what you said. We may see GMs and scouts who they do have different tier breaks. And so if they have, let's say, Matas Buzelis as their 3rd best player and then a tier break there, and he's available at 3, they may see it as an opportunity to jump and go get their guy. And another team may go, well, we don't have any of these guys in a high tier. We can trade back to 8 and get one of 7 guys that we would be extremely happy about. So I think what we will see is 1 or 2 of those type of situations happened. Again, to reference the mock draft that we just did, Pistons were on the clock at 5. I didn't love the options. So I traded back with the Spurs, who loved the idea, Sam, in this case, of taking Steph Castle at 5. I traded back to 8, and I got to draft Dalton Connect at 8, where I may have taken him at 5 anyway. And I liked that trade for the Pistons. And the Spurs got to walk out of there with Steph Castle and Zachary Risache, which I think is a great draft for them as well. So there are deals to be made here, Jacob. It just kind of depends on boards. I will say I have talked to someone about a player who some GMs have in the top 10 and some GMs think he's maybe a 2-way player. That's the vast difference on some of these guys. Yeah. And that in itself could lend to movement, correct? Or the other thing is I'm going to stay where I'm at and my guy's going to fall to me, and then we won't see movement.
For sure. All right, last question. This Thunder podcast, what do they do at 12? You can give us a guy they draft at 12. You can tell us they trade back. You can tell us they trade up. You can tell us they trade out. What do you think they do at 12? And if you were in Sam Presti's shoes, what would you do on draft night armed with that 12th pick?
Yeah, I do think they take Tinjon Saloon. It just seems like he is the Thunder guy. And so I think that's what Presti would do as we're sitting right here. If Saloon falls to 10, or excuse me, to 12, and nobody tries to make a move above the Thunder, I don't think we're the only ones sitting here going, this Tinjon Saloon guy seems like a Sam Presti, Oklahoma City Thunder type of pick. He kind of fits into what they need at that position in that role. If we really want him, we may need to move above 12 to go get him. So I would say Tinjon Saloon and just kind of filling the Thunder. I think he makes a lot of sense in that role. So I will stick with that. Who am I to doubt Sam Presti, the best general manager in the NBA? So,
hey, if y'all haven't yet, you listeners who are tuning in and listening to Bryce talk about Saloon, Bryce and Sam both did a fantastic breakdown on Saloon's game. It's up on their YouTube page over at the Game Theory podcast. And I think there's a lot of talk just in general about, well, we don't want another Usman Jang. And I think listening, just to use an example, but listening to you guys break down Saloon's game really gets me more excited. And I think you guys did a great job of breaking down why he's not the next quote unquote Us or another project necessarily. He's somebody who can come in and potentially contribute immediately just based off that motor.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Bryce, if you were in charge of the Thunder on draft night, would Saloon be the pick as well?
Yeah, I think so. It makes a lot of sense for me. He's in that range on my big board. The guys we've talked about are all in a similar tier. Bub, Saloon, Deron Holmes. We didn't talk about Kyle Filipowski, and we should, because he is another dribble, pass, shoot big. Jacob, not so much. Interesting.
I'm just going to say it, Bryce. I've had my fill of my fill of white guys from Duke. I'm just kind of out, bro.
Okay, fair enough.
Kyle Singler, when you guys sent him to Oklahoma City, you broke me. Okay, I can no longer do white Duke dudes. I just can't.
Got it. So Kyle Filipowski, no. Got it. I will. That's one less guy we have to talk about.
Deep wound.
That's just my opinion.
No, I think he fits the similar mold though we're talking about here. Some people really believe in the dribble, pass, shoot. He's a little more mobile than maybe what he gets credit for. So he's another name, but all of these guys are in a similar tier for me. And, obviously there's always a chance somebody drops. Does Matas drop to 12? Again, I don't think so, but is it possible? Maybe. If Dalton Knecht drops to 12, that's a lot of floor spacing that could be interesting for the Thunder that maybe replaces an Isaiah Joe if you don't think he's going to be there long-term because of, I think Isaiah Joe gets paid eventually by somebody, whether it's the Thunder or somebody else. But I think the guys we've talked about, it's the range, and Saloon makes a lot of sense to me.
Those are my thoughts as well. I think there's a lot of Thunder fans who think just this draft based off where the Thunder are now, in comparison to a year ago, 2 years ago, that Presti's going to just draft based upon need, a true big or a big rebounder or whoever it may be, or a Saloon who can kind of fill in that fourth spot. I don't want to call it a 4, but that fourth starting spot long-term to fit with the starters. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Devin Carter above Carrington there.
No, it's I do think the Thunder are in a sweet spot. You asked me at the top, Jacob, to kind of talk about this draft in general. And I really think that this tier of guys are the ones where the talent, the value, the range really all meets together. And I think, we get so-and-so at pick 12. We talk about Deron Holmes. My tier here goes to 18. If I'm getting Deron Holmes at 18, I'm feeling very good about that. Or Bub Carrington, or the next guys are Jared McCain and Jacoby Walter and Tyler Smith. You're still talking about, I think it's a really nice sweet spot in this range until you get to the end of the first round. And then I start to have some more questions about some of those guys. But quite honestly, the Thunder, the rich get richer, are in a really nice spot in this draft, because that's what Sam Presti does. He wins at everything.
We didn't even talk about McCain, and then Nick's one of his favorites is Tyler Smith. So we'll have to have Bryce on for a part 2.
Yeah.
I feel like we could do like a million of these podcasts and not touch everybody.
Agreed.
JD, do we have time to hit a few listener questions before we get out of here?
We do. Let me run through some that we have starred. From our guy, Carey. Which player is going to be the most fun at Summer League?
This is an amazing question. I love it. Most fun at Summer League. I could see Ron Holland, because I do think he's very athletic, getting out in transition. I think his game will fit well to that. I've seen some push about how athletic Buzelis is. So maybe I wonder if though someone like Connect or Reed Shepherd just gets it going from
Get
three.
the flamethrower going.
Yeah. And I think that can really get a gym going at Summer League. I'm also hoping that people don't come to Summer League as much because last year was a
insane
madhouse.
It was.
You couldn't even get into the back gym. I was like, what is going on? Why can't I just walk into the back gym?
Hey, no 1B this year. I think we'll be safe. Also, I'm glad you didn't say Donovan Clingan on this question. I don't want to watch a dude move his feet and drop and pick and roll at Summer League. Give me the dunks, baby. Yeah.
Donovan Clingan doesn't make sense here. No, Zachy, these guys are going to be good NBA players. Summer League, nah, get them out.
I have a fun story about the pack gyms from being at Summer League last year, Bryce, but we'll save it for after the podcast.
Okay, perfect.
Long.
Cool.
A couple more we had starred from our guy, Matt Clarkson. More of an observation, I think. He says, I think whoever gets drafted is going to spend the season with the blue, so the focus should be on potential.
Interesting
point. Fair point.
Yeah. I mean, are there holes in the rotation? We talked about this with the guards. There's not. And you have cap space to add another rotation player if you want. So my guy, Gordon Hayward, couldn't get off the bench. So who knows if the draft pick's going to be able to.
Yeah.
You got to at least try to shoot the basketball, Bryce.
Got to try.
I was so mad. I project like the only thing I got right at the deadline. I said the Bulls were going to sell. Of course not. I said all this other stuff was going to happen. None of it happened. I said Gordon Hayward's going to get traded to the Thunder. I thought it was a great move. We all did. Sam Presti did it, and Gordon Hayward was a non-factor in the playoffs.
A 6'7", 6'8" wing who can defend, dribble, pass, shoot.
Veteran.
Has a history. Veteran. The fit was ideal. And the man came here and said, basketball, never heard of her.
Final comment from Thunder Chick 2010. This is more of a fun one. Are the Thunder Sar brothers more likely, or the Thunder Williams brothers more likely?
That's good.
Thunder Williams brothers are definitely more likely, but I really like what she's thinking here. This is a great question, comment, well played. But yeah, Presti would have to love Sar. And listen, I'll tell you this. You put Sar and Chet out there on defense, have fun trying to score. We mentioned it.
Yes.
I think it was before we recorded. We talked about Wemby and Sar together. Chet and Sar would be really tough to score on. But yeah, I think the realistic option here is Thunder Williams brothers.
Love it.
We'll just bring Olivier into the primary, in the main squad next season. We'll be good to go.
JD, you want to play that outro music? Bryce, thanks so much for coming on, dude. We cannot thank you enough for spending your evening, getting the kids down and coming on the show. Thank you so much. You guys, if you do not already, make sure to go listen to Bryce on the Game Theory podcast. If you're some type of wild degenerate and you like the Thunder and the Pistons, you can go check out the Pistons Pulse podcast and follow Bryce on Twitter at Motor City Hoops. He won't see your likes because those are private, but he I'm sure he would love to have you guys follow along as we get closer and closer to the draft. Bryce, do you have anything else that you would like to plug before we get out of here?
One, my wife takes care of the kids, so shout out her. She is the superhero of all the content creation and podcasts I get to do. Second, you guys have the best intro video of the podcast I've come on. I found I was just like back here smiling and going with the vibes and everything. So shout out you guys for the production you put on. Thank you so much for having me. I'd come back anytime. I had a blast here.
No, well, don't say that because we'll definitely get you back. So,
hey, also, Draft Digest. Bryce is doing some great work over there as well with Nick and our guy DP, Derek Parker.
We might have to get Derek Parker on. I haven't seen Derek in a while. One of my favorite pictures in the world is Derek next to Liz Cambridge at Summer League. 4'0" and 8'0" next to each other is just incredible. You guys have a great rest of your week. We will be back Sunday for another draft episode. If you've listened to the podcast for a year now, you will remember that Nick put together this wild spreadsheet PowerPoint where he tried to pitch us for different draft prospects, but didn't give us their names and just like stats and context. And then we had to pick one. He's going to be back on his bullshit. And we are more than excited to do that. So join us Sunday. And then next Wednesday, we will have more draft coverage as we get closer and closer to the NBA draft. So have a great rest of your week. Join us on Sunday. Until then, and as always, Thunder up.